I think the number one game-changing best tool that you should become a subject matter expert in is LinkedIn.
So welcome to the AT Construction Podcast, and we have Peter Kuhn with us today. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, Brad. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on. So Peter is a board member with Goodwill, nationally. So you're with Goodwill.
Actually, just the Arizona chapter of Goodwill.
Oh, just Arizona. Okay, good.
Each one is an independent franchise, but Arizona, correct.
Okay, but Arizona, what we have like 130 or something. How many are in Arizona?
There's 115 Goodwill stores. The Goodwill of Northern and Central Arizona is the most successful Goodwill franchise in the system, and they touch over 350,000 people every year.
It's amazing.
Services. Their goal, their stated mission or objective is to end poverty as we know it.
It's incredible. And I want to get into how you got with Goodwill, because you're a lifelong entrepreneur. You're honorary commander at Luke Air Force Base. Amazing experience. It's going back to your background in Silicon Valley, on California. And I do want to get to the Goodwill. But what's interesting is the reason I brought in lifelong entrepreneur, because having known you, Peter, you're a wealth of information. You have amazing contacts, a huge network, as you've in your careers we're going to get into right here. But, tell me about the gopher story. And we were talking about this, previously before the podcast, but just about identifying customers and that success close rate, because I think you had a pretty good close rate.
So when we moved from New York to California, when I was 12 years old, we moved into a brand new subdivision. Everybody was spending, in those days, it was probably only thousands of dollars on landscaping, but they put this landscaping in, they started watering the landscaping. And what that would do is it would attract the gophers, because there's all these nice roots that are going down into the ground. The gophers would come and destroy everybody's yard. I can remember my dad having fits, the neighbors having fits. And I said, hey, I'm pretty good at catching these gophers. I went and bought a few gopher traps, rode my bike around the neighborhood. If I saw somebody's front yard that was ripped up, I'd go ring their bell and say, hey, look, I'll catch your gophers. It's $1 a piece. This was in the early 70s. And that was, actually money that caught my attention. So that really was my first experience as an entrepreneur. My close rate was 100% because, these guys that were executives at big companies in San Francisco, the last thing they wanted to do was come home and, set gopher traps and monitor them. And I loved it, and it was fantastic. So that really kind of got me started. One of the things that always stuck with me is my dad said, you'll never get rich making a W-2. You need to own your own business. And of the 4 houses that touched us when we were kids, 3 of the people own their own businesses, and they definitely had, I'll call it, aspirational lifestyles for us.
It's interesting, that advice. So he said, you're never going to get rich with the W-2. And you can, the reality is, yes, you can have a successful life. But essentially, if you want to get to the next level, just talk about how that had impact on you. And again, you've had many jobs, many career opportunities, to land you where you are now. How did that create the entrepreneurship spirit, that is natural to you?
I'm a take charge kind of guy. And I figure that if you want to control your own destiny, you need to do it yourself. And you can't rely on others. So over the years, I would identify opportunities and I would pursue them. I have a pretty high internal drive that I really credit my parents with instilling in all 3 of the kids in our family. And in fact, my mom says, my dad passed about 5 or 6 years ago, but my mom still says to this day, her proudest accomplishment is seeing the success that her children have had throughout the years, been good people, contributed to society, had financial success, had successful families. And then she's also really proud of the fact that I raised, pretty much as a single dad, 2 excellent young men that they've blossomed into my sons, who are in their late 20s, early 30s at this point in time.
Now, I would imagine, like any parent, they're going to be super proud of, what you've accomplished, Peter, and your family. And of course, that posterity, speak to maybe her influence on you being young. You mentioned your dad's gave you this advice about the entrepreneurship spirit, but, to your mom, were there certain things that she taught, her example in the home, being raised by your parents that kind of helped catapult you?
I didn't realize how good I had it growing up until I don't think I really fully appreciated what my parents did for us until I had my own kids. they sacrificed a lot. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was an executive, actually worked for Bechtel, a very large construction company, built oil refineries, airports, mines, that type of thing. I would get in trouble at dinner when I was a kid because I would jeopardize or monopolize the conversation. My mom would say, "Enough, Peter, you can't talk anymore." But they just instilled in us to do the right thing. Hard work paid off, and they provided us a supportive opportunity. One of my other early entrepreneurial ventures was having a newspaper route. And on rainy days, my mom would help me. We had the old country squire wagon with the wood panels on the side, and we'd roll down the back window, and I'd hang out the back window and throw the newspapers in the plastic bags on people's driveways. Probably couldn't do that today because if the police saw you do it, they'd probably stop the car and give the mom a ticket for child endangerment.
Isn't it funny how those things have changed? But what's interesting, I mean, again, your experience going from the gopher, identifying clients and how that's played a role, and then of course the newspaper, to now in your career quickly accelerating. Here you are in Silicon Valley. Just a quick background, embracing technology. How's that played a role? How did you get into the industry that you did and find so much success, finding businesses to work with when it's hard? It's hard to cold call. I think a lot of people struggle. Any salesperson listening, whether they're a trade partner, architect, builder, designer, they're starting a company. It's really hard to build a network, really hard to build relationships, to get your foot in the door, but you've had tremendous success doing that over the years.
All right. So Brad, there has been just a quantum shift in the ability to prospect and the ability to identify customers. Let's go kind of way back real quick. I went to Santa Clara University, a small Jesuit school in Silicon Valley. I went in as a finance major. After I was there for 60 days, I said, gosh, I need to be an accounting major. My dad's spending all this money on this education, and I need to get the most out of this education that I can. So I became an accountant. I was really fortunate. Accounting came easy to me. I had a 3.97 grade average in accounting, passed the CPA exam on the first time, went to work for Price Waterhouse, probably the most prestigious accounting firm in the world. Worked there for 3 years, said, gosh, this is all well and good, but I want a little more control of my destiny. What can I do? Ended up going into the insurance business, worked for Connecticut General Cigna, primarily to get training. Worked there for about 2 years, said, gosh, if I work for Cigna, I can only sell Cigna products, but if I go out on my own, I can sell the entire universe of products. So I said, okay, I'm going to go out on my own, because I had people saying, I'd like to do business with you, Peter, but we didn't have the products that solved their needs. Really, then, I think I'm a natural prospector. I'm always looking, my head's on a swivel. I'm taking in information, assessing the situation. Even to this day, when I drive around town and I see businesses, I'll look at it and I'll say, I wonder what they do, or what would be interesting here or there, et cetera. So you need to almost get in that natural, I'm going to call it hunter-killer mindset. Early on, I was in San Jose. Every Sunday, the San Jose Mercury News would come out, and that newspaper was probably 3 inches thick. 2 inches of that was help wanted ads, where all the Silicon Valley companies, again, were buying quarter page, half page, full page ads looking for engineers, HR people, accounting people, business development people, et cetera. I had an X-Acto knife, and I would go in and cut those ads out. Then I would call those companies, the beginning of that next week, and start to build my database and prospect. I said, my gosh, if these people are spending 10, 25, 50,000 for an ad, they've certainly got money for benefits. And it kind of goes back to the gopher story, where if you can identify a prospect, that helps a lot. So I would tell the people that are in the building or the trade network, if you're looking to grow or develop your business, you definitely need to put on your business development, your prospecting hat. I know that's hard to do. And like you said, people don't like to do it, but you need to identify it. I think the number one game-changing best tool that you should become a subject matter expert in is LinkedIn. And furthermore, I think you should buy LinkedIn Premium, because that allows you to dive in and delve deeper into what is out there and reach out to those people. I also think what you really need to do is put together a portfolio or explain the value-added proposition that you can bring. Again, I'm going to use that contractor or that even somebody who's looking to remodel or build a home. I think that is so important. So again, embrace LinkedIn. I think social media, nobody's better at social media than you, Brad. I don't think there's a builder that's close. So I think you can give a master class in that. In fact, they should probably sign you up for that.
Well, let me ask you this, because of course you touched something that's super important to me is LinkedIn, right? Which we'll get into. I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. I think there's a ton of value there. A lot of people don't realize that there's so much low hanging fruit, so much opportunity with LinkedIn that people just aren't utilizing, and it's such an organic platform. But what's interesting about the prospect is, trying to understand, okay, the analogies that Peter's given. You're talking about, okay, for the gopher story, it's really easy to identify clients so you can walk around, the neighborhood, bam, they have gophers, easy. It's going to help me with my close rate, right? But the prospecting, essentially what you're getting to is a curiosity. You have this curiosity, you have this head on a swivel that you're always looking for opportunities. And then, but you take that same experience and now you're applying it to Silicon Valley as you're doing HR benefits, right? For these companies, these big companies, you're just going to classify saying, look, these are people that are already looking for this. Why don't I make the first call, get in there? And then of course I have my organization dialed in, I have, again, like you're saying, I have my value proposition, I have my portfolio. So now as you're introducing yourself to these companies, it's lead generation that you found with the technology at the time that was a newspaper classified ads.
Correct. And I think you always need to evolve. I think as anybody who has been watching the news the last week or so, Chat GPT,
Yeah.
Google is concerned that this may impact their business. Who ever thought Google would have a legitimate competitor? But I believe they're legitimately concerned. When I first learned of Chat GPT maybe a month ago, the first thing I did was I sent an email to both of my sons and I said, you need to become subject matter experts in this because this will give you a definitive advantage over your peers. Again, anybody listening to the podcast, my word of advice to you, we are at a very unique opportunity. Figure out, learn how to use Chat GPT. I was just on a phone call earlier this morning with a friend. He wants to lose some weight and he put a request into Chat GPT, said, I want to have a 1,500 calorie diet a day. Can you give me recipes and a shopping list? And it spit it all out and gave it to him. That's insane.
Well, Peter, I love this example, the GPT, because we've done this. I actually had a production with my team and I was showing them. I mean, you look at just why, even utilizing Google, who's out there, who's in a panic mode. But the reality is, there's still a lot of value to WordPress and backend, website data, blogs, it's content, right? It's content, it's information, it's keywords. These things are valuable. And also now you have Chat GPT and now you're accelerating. You could, to your point, you can go in there and say, let me write me a blog on the pros and cons of having an in-house sauna right in my house. And bam, right away, 1 minute later, you have a 3,000 word blog. You can edit that, make sure it's in your own words, applicable to your region. But you're talking about instant content. To your point, I mean, imagine how this is going to change things, how quickly that artificial intelligence, when you think about just diet and healthy living, building homes, net zero, building, whatever it is. I mean, it's all at our exposure if we're going to utilize this and being on the forefront of it.
Yeah, maybe just do a query. Give me the top 10 energy leakage places in a typical home.
Right.
And then, it'll come back with that in a second.
And so as you're thinking about like company culture training, building science methods, as you're saying, that things that can protect us, what are litigation issues that we should be worried about as a contractor, whatever it may be, it's right there. And this is why you're at the front of it. And then going back to LinkedIn, which is interesting, is I've been, so big on LinkedIn only because, to your point, there's you can really target. For you, the example you gave, you said the ability to prospect, to find and target, right? And go after, and you can do that on LinkedIn. In your career, how have you seen LinkedIn play just a huge, how's that been a great beneficiary for you?
Oh my God. Because of my skill set in LinkedIn, I was able to get an engagement that paid me more than $250,000 a year for 5 years because of my skill set with LinkedIn and prospecting, tied in with Salesforce. And they were just blown away. And this took that company to the next level and helped increase their sales. I forget the data now, 3 or 4-fold, or their
So,
sales 3 or 4-fold because of
so,
that skill set that I introduced.
so maybe without giving away all your secrets, but essentially, what is that when you talk about Salesforce and LinkedIn? How did you utilize LinkedIn to accelerate that aspect?
So what we would do is we set up a customized Salesforce. I did my first Salesforce implementation in 2005 or 2006, I believe, right when Salesforce was launching, again, being in Silicon Valley. Prior to Salesforce, I had 3x5 note cards that I used to keep in a little recipe box on my desk. Then I migrated to, I don't know, a program called Act or something like that. But I was always worried that if my computer crashed or if my building caught on fire, I would lose all that data. So I kept 2 or 3 backup drives, one at my house, one in the trunk of my car. To be honest, that data was so valuable. But then all of a sudden, Salesforce came in, had triple redundancy backup. So then I'm like, okay, nothing will ever happen to this data. Plus, then you could converge and integrate the data with outbound emails, and then you could track and see if people opened the emails or clicked on the links in the emails, so you knew who to follow up call with and pursue. If they didn't open it, then you knew they weren't interested. But if they opened it 50 or 100 times, you're like, hey, there's a lot of interest here. I need to really follow up with this person. We then figured out a way early on how to basically, the LinkedIn people aren't going to like this, but scrape the data from LinkedIn and import it into Salesforce. So we actually had I guess a routine or an algorithm in LinkedIn Premium that anytime the companies on our prospect list had a change in HR, CFO, or CEO, we got an update about it, and then we would update our database on the fly and reach out and send them an introductory email on our value proposition. Again, we could probably do an entire podcast just on that. But again, that's a piece of technology. And again, if we're talking to folks that are in the building trades versus maybe somebody that's trying to grow a consulting practice, I know your skill sets are your ability to hang drywall or do finished carpentry or whatever it is. But boy, spend some time or hire someone, maybe even an intern out of college, to do something and build that up and get it going for you. Again, if people want to reach out, I'll give my contact at the end and I can have some discussions with them.
So let's speak about that for a minute, because essentially what you're saying is, we all have the skill set of whatever it is that we're producing, whether you're a designer, architect, subcontractor, builder, right? But you need somebody who's building the back end database, right? When you start thinking about the prospecting, as you mentioned, maybe it could be monthly newsletters, it's the contact. Because really what ends up happening is, our network is only as good as our prospecting. Our network is only as good as how many times we're in front of that person. That's why social media can give us some face time. But the reality is, like, if I want to work with an affluent clientele, I have to be around them. So where am I going to be around them? Is it at car shows? Is it at the golf course? Is it at the country club? Is it, at these networking events? I mean, you have to be around them a constant, right? So that top of mind, so that when they're building a house, they're thinking, hey, I'm going to call Brad. I know Peter, and so you have to be a resource, because if you're not in front of them, then it's really hard for them to find you. And there's a lot of ways to do that, not just in person, but also the back end, which is what you're speaking to.
So I'm going to call LinkedIn. I'm going to call certainly Salesforce, and I'll even maybe say LinkedIn. I'm going to call that hard skill sets, that, things that you need to master and understand, whether it's you or somebody in your organization. But then I'm going to call kind of more softer skill sets, as you said, whether it be attending charity events, whether it be, going to the Waste Management Phoenix Open in a box on 16 tomorrow, whether it be, a social media presence, whether it be having a blog, whether it be serving on a board in the community, whatever it be. Those are kind of softer skill sets. And I think you need to master both. And probably as I'm going to call it the boss or the entrepreneur or the owner, you probably really need to manage those soft ones, because you can't put those off on somebody else. But the hard ones, the hard skill sets, you can hire somebody to do that for you.
Yeah. So that makes a lot more sense, because there is a talent, right, to the soft skill set, right? Being out there and having the personality, being able to network and find common ground and build these relationships of trust in person. That's one aspect. But the hard, but the other aspect to that's what you're mentioning. When you think about Salesforce or LinkedIn or just other avenues of content, social media could be one, video content, whatever it may be. That's where you can utilize an intern. That's where you can utilize someone that understands the back end that may be more efficient so that we can focus on
Chat
the business.
GPT.
Chat GPT, that's going to save even more time, which I love that. So speak to maybe, Peter, when you were in Silicon Valley, you're working in the classifieds. Did you have an approach, because it's one thing to cold call, even though these companies may need HR, they need support, they have the need for the product that you're delivering. You still have to get in front of the right person. And it wasn't like now where you can go on LinkedIn and say, okay, well, he's the CEO of this company that's making the decision. How did you advance past just call it the front desk? How did you get to
The
who it was?
gatekeeper. The
Yeah,
gatekeeper.
exactly.
Uh, Believe me, Brad, lots of gatekeepers. And really what you would have to do is, if you were lucky enough to get that person on the phone or get their voicemail, you had to maybe demonstrate a technical competence. The word we would use is disturb them. You would want to concern them that although anybody over 5 or 10 employees had an employee benefit program, but I would try and say, hey, there's a better way to do it. Have you looked at self-funding? Have you looked at a health savings account? Have you looked at a health reimbursement account? Are you in compliance? Are you doing all of your necessary governmental filings and those type of things? And I can't tell you how many clients I picked up over the years by demonstrating my technical skills and ability. Now, I'll tell you a quick little funny story. At one point in time, I had a securities license. I had a Series 7 securities license because we sold 401k plans and you needed to be licensed. I went in and took the test, and I finished the test in half or a third of the allocated time. And after the test, a woman came and said, gosh, I was really struggling. Did you give up or what happened? I said, no. I said, I'm just really fortunate. This comes easy for me. I'm a CPA, and all of the things that you need to know for this SEC stuff relate to accounting and finance. So I whizzed through. I think my score on that test was 94 or 96. So again, I was lucky. If you came to me and said, Peter, I'll give you $1 million if you can learn Mandarin by the end of the year, I'd say, Brad, don't waste your time. It's not going to happen. I'm just not wired that way. But if you gave me a financial statement and said, look at it and evaluate it and tell me if this makes sense or if this business is profitable or should I invest in it, or you're penciling out doing a spec house or looking to invest in a multifamily or industrial building, I'm going to look at it pretty quick and say yay or nay, or I may say, you know what, I have a half a dozen questions and these are what they are. So one of the things I think that you really need to do is maybe do a skill set evaluation or inventory, and maybe even hire a coach or a subject matter expert on that, and then fill in or hire those people that complement you, not people that replicate you.
I love that. So it's not people that replicate you. It's people that, they have a different skill set. What's interesting though, that I do want to pick apart is when you're speaking about just the technical side, the reality is you knew your information. You had prepared for it. You had studied it. You had a clear understanding, and that gave you the upper advantage when you're going in to sell and close a deal with somebody. If you understand not just the product you're selling, if you understand not just, the exposure, the consequences by not having it, but you're also providing solutions, right? Essentially to these companies. And so you understand the full gamut of what you're presenting. That gives you the upper hand because now you seem like a resource as opposed to just a standard salesperson.
Okay, I'm going to pick up on that last word, salesperson. I never viewed myself as a salesperson. I viewed myself as an educator and a technical subject matter expert.
And so the educator and technical expert, aspect of this is that when a company is looking at their growth, and yes, this is a need they have to figure out, is there a health savings plan, right, that I can do? A health savings account? Is there 401k, right? These are benefits that are going to help them grow their business. They're going to help them be protected, of course, be in compliance, which we understand, but it's going to help them retain good people in their company. By you solving this aspect, well, now they can you use it as a resource, outsource that to you. And so essentially what it comes down to, an application for me as a builder is I have to understand what are the pain points of my customer, right? What is it that they struggle with when they're hiring a contractor? What's the fear that they have? What is, clear expectations for the build schedule? Is my team trained? Do we have the software? Are we, fulfilling what we're committing to do. And if I can understand their pain points, and then I know that we have the back end side, it's easier for me to image that right with them and create this common ground. And then of course, as you mentioned, hunt and kill, close the deal, move forward to the next one.
100%.
And
I absolutely think that you need to be a solution. I think that's a really good word.
so let me ask you this, network plays a huge role in this. And, with you, Peter, how did you get involved with Goodwill? And the reason I want to ask that is because here you are in Silicon Valley, you know, networking with some amazing business owners, I'd imagine, especially in the years that you were there, as this is the whole industry's booming, it's growing, not that it isn't now, but back then, right, this is at the precipice of everything going crazy there. How did that work? Just the value of your network and opportunities that came from that. And then now how you're on with Luke Air Force Base and, with Goodwill and just the amount of stuff that you're doing now.
Um, really the Goodwill opportunity came about because of my subject matter expertise in net lease retail real estate. At one point in time, I had 4 partners. We owned 425 Dollar General stores in probably 30 states. So I had some pretty deep subject matter expertise in there. Real estate is a huge part of the Goodwill operation. In fact, they specifically have a division called Thrive, which manages all of their real estate. I was introduced to Goodwill by a mutual friend, and then I had to go through an interview process with 5 or 6 of the executives, and they interviewed numerous people. And really, I nailed the real estate portion. And they said, hey, we could use someone with this level of subject matter expertise on our board. And subsequently, I've been able to partner with them. And through some of the ideas and strategies that I've given them, we're going to potentially create millions of dollars of revenue and opportunity for Goodwill that will result in improved offerings of services, whether it be educational, job training, other needs, mental health, even housing. So I'm really excited to partner with them and help them achieve their mission of ending poverty as we know it.
I love that mission of ending poverty. Getting back to the real estate side, is it common that Goodwill owns their buildings? Are they a lease tenant? How does that work from the real estate side?
Great question. Historically, they have been a lease tenant. They've seen all the value that they let's just say, sit through their fingers.
Right.
And
Right.
now they are starting to own the real estate. And that was one of the things that I was really brought on for some of my subject matter expertise there. But they're actually, and their real goal, Brad, is to develop campuses. And again, these campuses might have a Goodwill store. It may have a housing component. It may have an educational component. It may have a training component. It may have a daycare component. This is all evolving. In fact, Goodwill just launched the first, I'm going to call it, continuation high school for people over the age of 22 in Arizona. Because once you reach 22, I may not have this 100% right. You can't go to a traditional high school any longer, but they're working to give people high school or GED degrees, et cetera. So again, the work they're doing is amazing. The tagline at Goodwill, it's more than a store. And that has never been more true.
I love that aspect. This goes back to the evolvement, right? You said companies have to continue to evolve. That's part of it. How recent have they been involved when you think about the campus format, whether it be education, housing? Have they started that yet? Is this in plans?
It is in it. We are in the midst of it as we speak. In fact, I was out maybe 3 weeks ago with the president of the Thrive division, scouting potential sites for campuses. I can't really say much more than that at this point
Right.
in time, but it's happening.
That's super exciting. And going back to the commercial real estate, I think this part's really interesting because your experience, it's funny how you go from, being a CPA, working for Price Waterhouse, right at the time, Price Waterhouse, and then you go to, HR, Silicon Valley, to real estate, and these are completely different disciplines. Yes, you understand financial and how to read a balance sheet, which is super important, and that helps you be successful in all of them. But, the Dollar General store, understanding cap rates, understanding, that the land, whether we're going to, lease out the pad, whether we're going to lease out the building, the TIs that go with it, buying the building. I mean, all these different aspects. I can see why Goodwill has brought you on, because just like the McDonald's formula, right? They understand the values of land more than the burger. From your side, how are you continuing to change this to understand different target demos, understanding where to purchase the buildings because you have this experience with Dollar General?
I mean, I really think it's a cumulative, I'm just going to call it life experience that I can bring to the table. And the older me is a lot smarter than the younger me. The younger me thought I knew it all, but clearly that wasn't the case. So I think you learn from life experiences, and I've certainly had a number of home run successes, but I've also had some failures. And you learn. I think sometimes you learn more from the failures than you do from the successes. It's just easy and it just happens, and whatever you harvest the gains, but the losses hurt, and you take those to heart, and maybe then you won't make those mistakes on an ongoing basis. And I'm sure it's, again, if we're going to relate this to contractors, you've either bid a job wrong, or you did a job that you shouldn't do, or you selected a sub that was inappropriate or something like that, and you learn from that, and then you say, hey, I'm never going to let this happen again.
Yeah, and there is a lot of value, as all of us have gone through mistakes, and this is why the value of the network, right? I've seen that, there's a lot of mistakes I've made in my career as a builder, and they're painful. I mean, the reality is they're painful. They can be costly. They can be
Time sucks.
Time
Huge
sucks.
time.
Yeah,
Huge.
and you realize, well, if anything, understanding, and again, this goes back to the education aspect that you're speaking of, Peter, is that when you make these mistakes, as you self-evaluate that, and okay, I'm going to start making some changes. I'm going to update my operating procedures. I'm going to update, how I vet clients. I'm going to update how we're, managing things, and, do I have the right people on the bus, and where are they sitting on the bus, and so forth. But what's interesting is, as you think about these mistakes, ideally you're in a networking group too, where you don't have to make all the mistakes yourself. There may be someone that, hey, I could go to Peter and say, Peter, I have this issue. How would you deal with this? You have a ton of life experience. How is your network, people that have given you great advice, maybe great mentors, how has that played a role?
Oh, my network has been invaluable to me, whether it be introducing me to employee benefit clients, whether it be introducing me to friends, whether it be introducing me to investment opportunities. I'll give you a really easy example: the Dollar General stores. I had a friend who was a friend and a competitor in the employee benefit business, but we had a very good relationship. He was buying Dollar General stores one-off for cash. I said, why aren't you introducing any leverage to this? And I said, you should do a whole portfolio of these, because if you own one and that goes dark, it's 100% loss. But if you own 20 of them and one goes dark, it's a 5% loss. And then Dollar General had this huge advantage going for it in that it was a credit rated tenant. Banks love credit rated tenants, and they would loan us money at 2 or 3%. A couple of years, maybe 5 years ago now, 3 years ago, they would loan us money at 2 or 3%. We were buying these buildings at 7.5, even 7.75 cap rates. So we have 5 points of accretion to us, and these things just puked cash. But we lined it all up, and then we just kind of rinsed and repeat. Once we figured out how to do it, we could do it very efficiently, and we stuck to our sandbox. We didn't go buy multi-tenant centers because they're a lot more complicated to manage and run. We didn't get into industrial, we didn't get into office, etc. So I think one of the things that you really need to do is laser focus and become the king of that space, or the subject matter expert with deep expertise. Another example I can give real quick is municipal bonds. I loaded up on municipal bonds in 2008, 9, 10, and 11 when everybody thought California was going to fall off the face of the planet. There's a 300-page prospectus that comes with each one of those municipal bond deals. On about a page 180, it says if more than 55% of the people in that given municipality voted for that bond is no longer an obligation of the school district. It's an obligation of the homeowners in that community. So if there was 100,000 homeowners in that community and they issued a $300 million bond, each home had 3,000 in liability. I don't know if that number's quite right, but you get what I'm kind of driving at.
Yeah.
So there was no way for this to default. And in fact, those bonds were in front of the senior mortgage. And I was getting 7, 8, or 9% double tax-free on that money. Now, I loaded up on that, but the only reason I did is I was comfortable because I delved into the prospectus and understood it. I've talked to bond managers at hundreds, millions, even billion-dollar funds that didn't know that fact.
It's amazing.
It's
It
all
goes back
there
to,
in public domain. I'm sorry, Brad.
yeah, no, but it's all done in the public domain. It's just research, right? It's attention. But what I do want to break apart is interesting. You mentioned the laser focus, right? And this is why it's really important for everybody to understand who's my ideal client, right? How do I target to them? And you said this, how do I prospect to them? But more importantly, am I performing? Am I marketing? Am I attracting those that should be in the focus? And what's interesting about your concept is really understanding. Again, I always go back to the SOP, and people say, "What are your standing operating procedures?" Right? And really, the good example you gave about Dollar General is that you said it's a credit rated tenant, so that's great. That has and for anyone that understands cap rate in commercial real estate, even when you're going in and you're a credit rated tenant, that ups the value as well. On the resale and the cap rate in addition to the financing, the leverage side of it that you can work out with the banks. And then you're saying, okay, well, stay in our lane. We're not looking at distressed, shopping malls that we're coming in and now we have to find other tenants. And yeah, there's a lot of upside if you can get all leased out and, sell it to national real estate trust, but that's not our interest. We're looking at, I would imagine these are single, building, right? Is what you're looking at because you said I'm not doing multi-tenant. And so you understand clearly what you're going at. And by doing that, now you can have a successful business.
And 100%. And if a problem did come up, if the plumbing backed up, if we needed a new HVAC unit, if someone put their car through the front door, if the monument sign out front blew down, or if we had to repair the parking lot, if it was asphalt versus concrete, we knew exactly what it would cost to fix it. We had a network of vendors set up to make it happen. So we really had the whole vertical complete. And then what we did was we put them into a DST, Delaware Statutory Trust, and sold them to 1031 buyers because you get a premium on the exit.
Right. And that's where they're looking to place money based on where they're at. And again, Delaware is a great place to place your LLC. So again, anyone, in the business aspect understands, essentially where you're going, Peter. How does this look like now? Are you still involved with your insurance company back in Silicon Valley? Has that been sold? Kind of where are you at with the company you
So
built and started?
great question. I actually sold my company called IBP Insurance Services in 2017. I sold it to an organization named Acrisure. Acrisure is a $4 billion insurance agency. We've done over 1,000 acquisitions in the last 8 years. I am still actively involved with my clients in that business. We've added a lot of depth and bench strength to the team. I couldn't even guess, but I think Acrisure has 15 or 20,000 employees. So we've got unmatched resources in the employee benefit world that I could never offer my employees before when I was a boutique operation.
It's interesting. So you sold that in 2017. You're still involved. Is that by choice? Was that negotiated?
Oh, it's by choice, and really, there was really two constituencies that I was most interested in servicing. My employees. I had long-term employees, 20, 25, 30-year employees. In fact, the 30-year employee used to be the nanny for my kids growing up. And I needed someone to answer the phone, and then she became my right-hand person. And then really my customers. My customers put a lot of trust in me with a very important part of their organization and their compensation package. Benefits is probably the number 2 or 3 expense on a P&L after salary, and it's probably eclipsed rent now. So it's probably number 2. And I've developed relationships with these customers. And I've had customers for 10, 15, 20. I can think of one really high profile customer I've had for 32 years. So those relationships, again, to the network and to treating people properly, those are all important to me. So I'm still involved by my choice.
I love that, but you're passionate about it. I mean, these are relationships you've built, and it goes back to a network that you want to service these people. You don't want to just, hey, I sold the company, hand it off. This is why this goes down to the core of who you are as a person, Peter, is that, the authenticity behind it, that by having those values, having that relationship, that's what's helped you build, your business. That's what's helped you build opportunities throughout your career. What is the value of reading and listening? As you think about, I know for you, I think a good case study that you just gave was the municipal bonds, right? That you had looked at this is opportunity. And really it was just me taking time to read, to understand, and now I can utilize this?
Well, I think most importantly, Brad, is I was getting scared. I had made a big allocation, a big commitment to these municipal bonds. And I said, gosh, I said, what are my real risks here? And I looked at the financial statements for the school district. School district financial statements are a mess. They have gigantic post-retiree medical liability, and they have giant pension plan liability as well. Basically, every dollar a school district takes in, at least in California, every dollar a school district takes in, they spend out, so that they really have no net profit. So I was like, my gosh, how are these bonds going to get serviced? Well, it turns out the bonds are serviced through an ad valorem property tax. In California, you get your property tax, and it may be 1% for the property tax, but then there's 15 or 20 other line items for sewer, road improvement, mosquito abatement, junior high district, elementary, high school, community park, whatever. And those line items, I said, I need to learn more about these. That's why I started reading those prospectuses, and then I found that 55% clause, and I said, I'm good. And I wish, in retrospect, I would have made more allocations to that, because it's risk free. But my wife jokes that I'm I don't know, geek, a nerd, whatever it is. She is a voracious reader of novels. She may read a novel or two a week. I'm going to admit it here. I'm not proud of it, but I probably haven't read a novel in 30 years. do you know? But I probably spend as much time reading, but I'm reading about private equity, GP stakes. I'm reading about, details on where we might go on our next vacation, or a new car, or new technology, or trying to learn chat GPT or that type of thing. So I think it's important to spend the time to educate yourself. And then, just the thing, and I'm going to put a little sales spin on it. One of the things that we always used to tell people is, what was it? Shut up, don't throw up. So when you go out for a sales appointment, listen, as opposed to just spewing them everything that you know.
I love that aspect. I mean, was that a tough discipline for you? Because you mentioned, early on, here you're at the dinner table and your mom's like, okay, Peter, that's enough. I've heard enough from you. To now you're later in your career. How do you, manage that aspect to say, I need to be a good listener, which I think is hard for all of us. I know it's hard for me in particular, but, to be a good listener, really process and listen to, whether it be your customer or whether it be just someone in your network that may be saying something intelligent that you could download and, possibly use later.
I think it comes from life experience and patience and discipline, and just realizing that you don't know it all. I remember my high school self or my college self thought I knew it all, and clearly I didn't. And I think there's something to be said about being overly enthusiastic. One of my sons is probably even more expressive than I am. And finally, he has learned to, I'm going to call, reel it in a little bit, and has had a great deal of success in high technology sales. But again, it's because he's learned to discipline it and listen, and then contribute when it's appropriate, and make meaningful contributions.
So, getting back to, and you mentioned this just now, it's like in graduate school, you're top of your class. I mean, does that come from hard work? Does that come because you're passionate about it, because you actually enjoyed the content that you were studying?
I knew it was an end to a means, to be honest. Certainly the accounting. Am I passionate about accounting and, journal vouchers and assets and liabilities and retained earnings? No. But do I know it's important to understand if you want to have success in the area where I have elected to play? Absolutely. So it's a necessary skill set. I'm sure, the football players who are going to be playing in the Super Bowl this weekend, those guys hate probably weightlifting and training and running and all that kind of stuff, but it's necessary to achieve at the success level that they want to on the field.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, because it's really what makes people successful. Is it's one thing to say, well, Peter's had unique opportunity, or he's had this platform, but what they don't see is just the time, the research, the development. It's really the off hour stuff when you're grinding and pushing, and that people don't see, that really leads people to be successful in whatever aspect of life that they're in.
100%, Brad. And I'm sure you can look at some unglamorous or drudgery filled things that you've needed to do to get AFT to where it is, right? And nobody sees that, nobody respects it, and everybody just sees Brad running around going from cool project to cool project saying, hey, look at this. But that's about this much of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because sometimes I get that, right? Whether even some customers will say, "Is my project cool enough?" Like, or you go to these amazing projects, like But what's interesting is the behind the scenes, right? Just the stress like anyone has as you think about the people that are working to build this, the responsibility, right? Payroll and client expectations and timeframes and access to material and not just that, just the prior 10 years to get to this point, right? The jobs that we had to do to get here and build our reputation. And there's a lot of stress. And that's why I've realized, as an entrepreneur, that it's not for the faint of heart. There has to be this unique ability to be able to compartmentalize certain things, not get over emotional, understand how to learn from your mistakes. And what I like about you, I've heard you say this before, Peter, is, you have said that people have to create a mentality run towards fire, not, how to run against the herd. And it's hard. It's hard. Conflict's hard, right? Doing the hard things is not easy. And, how your success to run towards fire when most people would run away, that's not natural. Again, there's education aspects, but how would someone who is looking to increase that aspect of their behavior, personality, what advice would you give them?
I'm going to break this up into kind of two categories. When I say run towards fire, let's first use the investment world, whether you're going to make an allocation to a stock or a bond or a building or some venture capital fund or something like that. Really, what you don't want to do is you don't want to buy in at the top of the market. When you're in an Uber or you're in a cab and the Uber driver or the cab driver says, hey, you should buy this stock or buy that stock, that's probably not the time to do it. But when something's down and out, beat down, downtrodden, that's the time to evaluate it. And if you can then see some runway or to a period of time in the future when that may be worth more money, that's a good time to potentially consider an allocation. So really my run towards fire is almost take a contrarian investment approach or look at things that are undervalued versus overvalued. The run towards fire for your career and business opportunities, I think what you need to do is you may want to do some things that maybe take you out of your comfort zone or are a little scary, but try and make those decisions in an informed and emotionally stable manner, not in a totally emotional, unfocused manner where you just say, this is what I should do. I don't know if I said that quite right. Did that make sense, Brad?
Yeah, completely. And maybe I'll give an example here. And, the mutual relation that you and I know you met Mark La Liberté, but what's interesting is, when you talk about get out of your comfort zone and in the past, so AFT in the past, right? We've done, SIPS trusses, we've done ICF, insulated concrete form construction, you know, so there's building science elements, right? But I've never built like a true net zero. When Mark came to the table and was introduced, and I know he was interviewing a lot of builders, it was, I'll be honest, years ago, it was pretty intimidating that here's someone who's been a staple in the industry for construction for his entire career. He teaches this, he has a school about it. And although I've had interest in it, our team's had interest, we've had some experience, there's a level of expertise that he had. And so it would have been easy to be in my comfort zone to say, this is an opportunity we're not going to do because it's going to be challenging, right? There's going to be some learning aspects. It's going to be challenging for some of our subs to get to this level. There's going to be some things that I'm going to have to rely on Mark, to educate me and my team. But what I saw is just like you're saying, this was an opportunity, like you're thinking investment. It's not that this was a bad investment. It's just, hey, here's an opportunity, go after it, learn it. Don't be afraid of it. Go figure it out. And now we can utilize that, right? As now I have other clients that are coming to me saying, Brad, we want to build net zero. You can do this. You've done it. We're going to be using similar methods. And so I've seen how that just broke down a barrier for me and other builders in the area that we can do something now that will help change the future. And really, like you're saying, I mean, this is where the market's going and we have to be in front of it.
Yeah, I don't know how many other builders can say that they've built a net zero house.
Yeah, and especially in Arizona where,
Yes.
this house is super modern. You've been there and it's like all glass. I mean, it's like 33% of the house is glass, which is pretty unique and still hit that net zero rating. For you, especially growing up in California, going to school in California, Santa Clara, I've had a few friends play basketball there, so I know a little bit about it. And then of course you're in the Bay Area. Why Phoenix?
Why did we leave?
Yeah.
It really came down to lifestyle and opportunities. I certainly love the Bay Area. I have great friends and relationships there. We live currently in a community called Desert Mountain, which is probably unreplicatable or will not be replicated in the future. It's 8,000 acres, 7 golf courses, 30 miles of private trails, 10 restaurants on property, 60,000 square foot facility. Hopefully they're going to pay me a commercial endorsement. But really, and then the price point. I guess you're kind of tainted when you come from California. I mean, the house that I'm recording this from right now, we bought this house in 2013, and I think, well, I know we probably paid 250 or 275 a foot for a finished product, and it's a beautiful home. And in California, that same house might be $1,000 a foot, and you don't get the same lot. So just from a financial perspective, and then the amenities that the Phoenix Scottsdale offers. I mean, this week is shining example as there is. You got Waste Management Phoenix Open and the Super Bowl, in our community in the same week. We just had Barrett Jackson. We're having the Arabian show. So it's really an amazing place. And then one of the other things that my wife and I really talked about is we like to travel quite a bit is the airport. We looked long and hard at kind of the La Quinta, Indian Wells, Palm Springs area. And that airport over there is substandard because you really have to either go to Vegas or LAX to get anywhere. The nice thing with Phoenix is you have Southwest and you have American as hubs. So you can pretty much get anywhere you want on a direct flight. So that's important as well. And then the professional sports and the concerts, etc. So we really like what it has to offer. And at this stage of our life, it works for us. And I think that's important. I think you need to make decisions that work best for you. When we had, this area up here, North Scottsdale, is not conducive to raising a family. You're too far from schools. You're too far from everything. And I would say the majority of the people up here are 50 plus, 55 plus.
Yeah, and they are great golf courses. I mean, you say 7, but I mean, they're amazing golf course up there in Desert Mountain. And it's an incredible community. In fact, you're not too far from the net zero home. In fact, I think you're like 5 minutes because we're
Correct.
at your place and went up the street there. And here you are on social media, super active on social media, Instagram. You live what you preach, right, Peter? You're speaking about embracing technology. You do that. And when I was going to ask you, like, what do you do for fun? Well, you've kind of said some of it. I mean, golf, mountain biking. Travel. What is it that and then maybe along those lines, like, how did you even get involved with Luke Air Force Base? Being an honorary commander.
Again, through my network, a friend of mine said, "Hey, Peter, gosh, you seem like a pretty stand-up guy. They're looking for people to serve in the honorary commander program. Would you have any interest in that?" And I said, "Absolutely." My cousin is a 30-year West Point grad. I'm very involved with the Wounded Warrior Project here in Arizona. In fact, my wife and I are really the biggest supporters of that tournament each year that we've had for 3 years in Sedona. I believe it's right around September 11th each year. So I've seen firsthand what it's like. Two of my wife's sons, one's a police officer, one's a firefighter. So again, first responders as well. So I have a lot of respect for those people. Brad, people like you and I, other people listening to the podcast, would not have the quality and type of lives that we have without those people putting their lives on the line every day for us. So I think that anything we can do to support and embrace them, particularly in today's day and age, I'm 100% in on.
So if anyone wanted to be like an honorary commander, right? What does that entail? Qualifications, but more importantly, like, what do you do, having that title?
So what you really do is you go out and you learn about the mission of the base, and we spend time on the base learning about their different tactical missions. We're going to go down to the Goldwater firing range and actually see live fire demonstrations. We had a briefing last week or the week before about the history of the base and why it was named Luke Air Force Base. They have, I think, 177 or 178 aircraft there. They're actually the staging base for all the aircrafts that are going to do the flyover for the Super Bowl. And then we try and expose the, let's call it the officers or the executives at the base to our network in the community. And then they do the same thing so that there's a better melding of Luke Air Force Base with the, let's call it the Phoenix metro area. They typically target executives or business owners, and you have to go through an interview process. And I don't know, I think they only take one of 4 or 5 people that apply. So there are some standards, and certainly if somebody's interested in that and they want to reach out, I'll be happy to share some more with you. The nice thing is, you do get to go for a ride in an F-16, which sounds really exciting, but nervous at the same time. So that should be exciting. I got to do an F-16 simulator a couple of months ago, and that was pretty cool. Again, when you get to know these guys and the amount of time and just the insights they have, I've talked with them about what's going on. I can't. It's come on, the Russian conflict. Help me out. What is it?
What's happening in Ukraine and Russia right now?
Ukraine. Thank you. Yeah. Ukraine. Mm-hmm. What's happening in Ukraine? We talked about tactics and these kind of things. And some things they'll say, "Oh, I can tell you this," but other things they're like, "Can't tell you anything about that." Next point, please. So they're pretty serious about the secrecy, et cetera. We talked about that Russian spy balloon the other day too.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you don't get motion sickness either up there in that F-16.
You know what? I have not, but I've never experienced 7, 8, or 9G. So
right.
Uncharted territories.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to have a follow-up on that and see how that goes. So what do you have that's upcoming and exciting? I mean, especially that, you sold the business, but you're not retired. I mean, you're still completely
Correct.
active in that business as well as Goodwill.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever retire to be in the traditional sense. I think it really comes down. We talk about this a lot, that if you don't have your health, you don't really have anything. And I work hard to exercise. I work hard to eat properly, at least 2 out of 3 meals a day. I got to have a little cheat every now and then. But really, what's up? I think better than anybody else, Brad. We have this looming project here, so I don't know if you want to start getting into that, but that is front and center, and there is probably nothing that is more important in my life right now than that.
Yeah, in fact, I think we have a call after this podcast. So just truth be told, Peter's one of our clients, and I think this goes back to just the value, right? We had connected for quite some time through social media, through Instagram. I know there's some projects we did that you'd reach out and ask questions, and I'd try to respond. And so there was kind of a little friendship, if you will, built online for quite some time.
Correct. And I think with Paul as well, Paul's always got his I like Paul's music choices.
He does have some good music choices, and Paul's awesome. And again, this goes back to, I meet Peter, you're one of our clients that we're going to be, that we're building for. Paul is an amazing, player here at AFT, and I met him through Instagram, right? Through social media. And here he is, having his own business in Colorado, and then meet him through Instagram, and he moves down here. And so it's just amazing how, there's opportunities that come as we embrace technology and use it.
Well, and one of the things, Brad, I think is that I had. So I didn't really get on Instagram until probably March or April of 2020. And really what it came down to was, that was the beginning of COVID. The whole world shut down. There was no more. I'm a huge sports fan, so I probably watch more sports than anything else on TV. That was all gone. I was bored. And I started getting onto Instagram. And then, we knew we were going to build a house. So I started following architects. I started following builders. I started following designers. I started following subs and that kind of stuff. And then, in all fairness, you stuck out head and shoulders above anybody else, certainly in our market. And I said, I wish I would have known about you, before we started building the house. And I said, that's somebody that I could see myself partnering with. And then it really gave me a really detailed insight into to what you do, how you do it. So I think it was, let's call it a 2-year interview process. Maybe that might be too strong, but you know what I'm saying? You're
Yeah.
getting to see the value of the work or the portfolio of work that you're putting together. So I would encourage, again, particularly people in the builder community, or really in any entrepreneur listening here, build out your social media. And I would, one suggestion I might make is and I know this is hard, is maybe have a business Instagram and then have a personal Instagram, because they're different, and sometimes some things don't play well with one audience versus another. But really, do whatever you want on your personal Instagram. That's fine. But for your business Instagram, really showcase some of the excellent work, the products, the services, the value added, the subject matter expertise that you can provide. One of the things I wish Instagram would do is make it easier to click through to get more information. This whole click on link in bio, you got to back out and come in. I don't like that. So Instagram, if you're listening, you should be able to click on the picture and go right through.
Yeah, I do like that. They don't hyperlink anything.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's they're just trying to monopolize the content, but that part is really difficult because most other platforms will do that. But Peter, I mean, you've been amazing, wealth of information. I love just the background of understanding how to run towards fire, understand your prospects, ideal client, and then again, find it, utilize your time wisely. And so many opportunities will come through that network. So where can our listeners find you?
Probably the best place is either Instagram or LinkedIn. So my Instagram is Peter, Peter, V as in Vincent, Kuhn. I'll say that one more time. Peter, Peter, V as in Vincent, Kuhn. And then my LinkedIn is Peter Kuhn. It'll show up as IBP Insurance Services on my LinkedIn. Be happy to connect and share. Always looking for interesting opportunities and to learn.
Oh, you've been amazing, Peter. Well, thanks so much for making time, and I'll see you later today.
Yeah, Brad, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks. And again, really impressive with what you and your organization have done and are doing. So excited for this journey. As much as I like you, Brad, the shorter the better.
Well said. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.